Thank you for joining the Building Capacity for Research and Action webinar. This will be the third round for our RFP. Today's presentation team will be myself, Athena McKay, the Flint Connector for MSHR's Community Engagement Department, Patricia Pekowski, the Administrative Program Director, and Adam Paberis, one of our well-versed program managers. And again, some housekeeping, please mute your microphone throughout the conversation, as well as we encourage participation. We will use the chat box for you to submit any questions, comments, or concerns. If there's a volume issue where, for whatever reason, you may not be able to hear us, please submit that in the chat, and Adam will be monitoring that so that we can get through the session. Our goal for this webinar is to provide information about the Building Capacity for Research and Action, better known as BCRA award, share some tips on developing a strong application, and encourage your teams to utilize MSHR's resources. So we'll start with a quick question. If you could answer in the chat, we would like to know who we have on our call this morning. If you could please submit an A if you are a community organization, a B if you are an academic partner, a C if you are a government agency, D if you are a hospital or health systems representative, and E for other. We'll give a couple more minutes. We have a few more guests we would like to participate. Great. We have a slew of academic partners, and we have as well as the community organization. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'd like to turn it over to Patricia. Excuse me, I'm just used to calling her Tricia, so we'll keep it informal this morning. Tricia is our CE Administrative Director, and she's going to give us some more details about what we do here at MSHR. Tricia?
Awesome. Thank you, Athena, and thank you, everyone that joined us. Just to let you know, the Michigan Institute for Clinical and Health Research, it's here to enable and enhance clinical and translational research. And what that means is really to provide supports and services to push research along a spectrum. And so it's kind of like when something happens in the lab, some research that happens in a laboratory, if we know it works, we would move it along to a clinic. Hopefully then we would move it out into a larger like practice-based network or a community, and ultimately policy and population health. And so that's what we mean when we say translational research. And so you can see on the screen now, we were created in 2006, and we are one of over 50 clinical and translational science awards funded by the National Institutes of Health. Our original funding started in 2007. We were renewed in 2012 and 2017. Next slide. So these are all the programs that MSHR has to support you in your research needs. The 4 buckets that we have are educate, fund, connect, and support. And they're all towards this ultimate mission to enable and enhance research. And so education, we have various programs to teach researchers, both community and academics, to do research. We have funding mechanisms like you're hearing about today. We also have a broader pilot grant program, and they can provide other services, which we'll tell you a little bit about later. Under our Connect bucket, we have community engagement and participant recruitment, and then support, which is various services for around data, biostatistics, and if you guys have any questions, you can contact Athena and we can connect you to the right services and supports at MSHAR. So community engagement, we work to promote research that addresses community health priorities, and that this research uses community engaged approaches. We provide connections, so to both academic and community partners to find each other to make great matches in research. We offer consultations that are free of charge and various education, like today, for both community engaged research partners and teams. So today we're here to talk about our funding mechanism, as Athena mentioned, building capacity for research and action. And really it came out of our current NIH-funded grant. And we wanted to strengthen and diversify the capacity of communities in crisis to engage in and benefit from research. And so part of that was to establish a mechanism that was going to support new research projects that utilize a team science approach, as well as a community engaged approach. And so we call this building capacity for research and action. Next slide. Oh, actually, before Athena, you go to the next slide, I did want to point out that this award, we say community engaged research partnerships and projects that address community priorities. And this means that research questions that are grounded in priorities identified by the community. So not research that academics at institutions think are important, but that community thinks is important and is grounded in their needs. So I'm now going to turn it over to Athena, and she'll talk a little bit more about what we mean when we say community engaged research.
Thank you, Tricia. As you know, for those that are Flint residents or have Flint on their radar, with the water crisis, there was an influx of research interest to our community. And so when we talk about community engaged research here at MSHAR, we are looking at an approach to research that supports authentic partnerships of people affiliated with or self-identified by geometry, proximity, special interests, and or similar situations to address issues affecting the well-being of Flint. So those characteristics by principle include the guide to research with shared decision-making between the community and the academic partner. Also co-learning of university resources and agendas, as well as the community blueprint throughout the impact in the community and health impacts. And there should be benefits between all partners, both community and academics. Some benefits of community engaged research include that researchers learn about community strengths and needs, increase the relevance of a research question, improve the likelihood of translating research findings, to gain access to university resources, to collect data, stories to improve programs and services. And lastly, but not least, is finding funding for policy and program changes. For the building capacity for research and action, there are actually two portals in which you could submit for: a $5,000 partnership development or a small scale research for $10,000. One of the one of the differences for these two mechanisms is for the $10,000, you will need to identify and measure health impacts on your project. To be eligible, you will need both a community and academic partner one of the distinct things about this particular tool and mechanism is that your academic partner does not have to be from U of M. As I mentioned earlier, this is the third round for BCRA. In 2018, we were able to fund 8 projects. We had 4 partnership development awards and 4 small pilots. 5 of those came from U of M Ann Arbor, 2 from U of M Flint, and 1 from Michigan State University, with very diverse research themes. Last year, the 2019 awardees, as you see, there were 2 from the University of Ann Arbor, 2 from U of M Flint, and 1 from MSU, with varying community partners. I'd like to take a quick poll. Who is ready to go and already has a community and or academic partner to apply? Just a yes, I'm ready to go in the chat box, or I'm still looking. Okay. We have 2 comments. And I believe we have both an academic that has submitted that they're still looking for a community partner, as well as a community partner looking for an academic partner. This is the perfect place to be. Well, I guess I answered my second question, sorry. So the question was, if you were a community partner and did not have, were you looking for a community or academic? And based on the submission you had earlier, I kind of answered that question. So I wanted to pinpoint this because we here at MISHAR would like to help you gain that partnership to develop an authentic partnership with either academic or community partner. So based on the information that's provided today, you can follow up with myself or someone from our team so that we can help you look for an academic and or community partner with like interests. One of the things that our awardees helped us form this mechanism, they requested that they learn about other funded projects. With that, we created an annual meet and greet where each team was able to present their status, where the information, lessons learned with the projects, as well as some challenges that they all incurred so that we could best serve you here at MISHAR. So that we were able to partner community and academics together to build sustainable relationships over the last 2 years, and we would like to continue that work in this round as well. The application itself, hopefully you've been able to visit our website to look over the application. There is a face page which asks for general information. There's a 250-word abstract that is required. There's a 2-page maximum, so this is somewhat of a quick turnaround as far as application, which we're looking for significance of your project, the impact you will make on the community, information about your partnerships, and the approach you would take for the research. Listing also your references, your approvals, your budget, justification, and letters of support. The application review process and expectations. It's reviewed by a committee of community and academic partners with CENR experience. The projects need to address Flint-specific community health priorities, demonstrate collaboration between at least one community partner and one academic partner. Again, this academic partner, does not have to be from the University of Michigan. And engage community members and residents who have firsthand knowledge and experience. Tricia, did you want to share a little more about the review process?
I did, and sorry, there was a little bit of echo. Let me see if it's better now. Okay, it is. Actually, I wanted to point out that Eli Samuels is on the phone, and he manages our evaluation component here at Mishar. And as Athena mentioned earlier on, the difference really between the $5,000 and the $10,000 proposals is the $5,000 is for partnership development, and the $10,000 is for doing a small research project. And we also require you to make sure that you have outcome measures. And I wanted Eli to be able to just give a short description of what we mean when we say outcome measures. Eli, are you able to do that?
Yeah, I am. Thank you, Tricia. So I can talk a bit, as Tricia mentioned, about the outcome measures that might be appropriate for a submission, but I want to also make sure that people know that they can submit questions in the chat or just pipe up to interrupt and ask a question. I'll try to be relatively brief, but there's a lot that can be said about outcomes and evaluation, particularly in regards to this mechanism. So I want to make sure that I'm not giving it too short a shrift and that people have the opportunity to ask questions if they like. Tricia, just to confirm, that is okay if people ask a question in chat or just pipe up to do so. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine. And Eli, sorry we don't have a slide for you, but I figured since you called in, we could kind of take advantage of you being on the phone.
Yes, absolutely. So I will say that there's sort of one basic distinction I want to make in outcome measures that I think will be helpful to all applicants. And that is the difference between sort of a health impact, which is what we're all striving for in this field, and sort of other upstream impacts might be a good way to describe them. So we're always looking for research partnerships and projects that have the potential to have an impact on human and community health. This is a very difficult thing to measure, but we've been encouraging all BCRA awardees to identify a health-related outcome and to try to measure it. Now, this is difficult to measure because it's often the case that the people who are receiving the service may have a downstream benefit to their health. So they may be receiving information that you expect to be used to improve human health. And it's rarely the case that people who participate in BCRA awarded projects are receiving an actual like health treatment or some type of health intervention, although there are cases of that. So if there is an opportunity to measure impact on human or community health, please note that in your submission and identify the measure that you're going to use. If it's what I've described as an upstream measure, so that might be people thinking that they could use the information that you've given them about community health, or it might be people using a referral service or their satisfaction with a training program. All of those upstream measures are also good to have in submissions identified as metrics that will be used for the purposes of evaluation. It's okay if that downstream health impact measure is not something that really can be evaluated in the projects that you're submitting for funding. But I wanted to make that distinction up front. Um, Before I go into any sort of further detail about other aspects of evaluation, that's a really important point to just sort of stop and allow people to ask questions about. Do people have any questions or concerns about the difference between sort of a health impact or a health measure and some of the upstream measures that I talked about? Are there any questions or concerns about that? Okay. Well, please know that you can reach out to me, Trisha, or Athena if you have any questions about evaluation at any other time and follow up with us about this or other points. But I'll say one more thing before I turn it back to Trisha, and that is about validated health measures. So a lot of times people are have questions about the use of validated measures of health. And by that, I mean survey questions that have had some type of testing and are sort of published in the field as good measures of, and I'll just have a sort of some examples here of stress or belonging or psychological distress or wellness. There are validated instruments, survey instruments in published research literature, which if you can use, if they're relevant to your research, are far better to use than survey questions you come up with yourself. And that's because those questions have received some types of testing. You can, if you're searching for validated instruments and you're struggling, again, you can write us or write Trisha or Athena, and they'll direct you to me, or you write me directly, and I may be able to help you identify a validated measure. There may not be a validated measure available that I can find or you can find, in which case coming up with your own is certainly acceptable. But I wanted to point out those two things, the use of validated measures and the difference between a health impact and other types of evaluation metrics that you might use right at the start, because I think those are things that are helpful to include in your submission when you get the chance.
Eli, in the chat box, are you able to give an example of what others have used for health outcomes and measures?
Yes, sure, I can do that. Let me put into the chat box a link to a website that other BCRA awardees have used to identify some health measures. It'll take me just a second to do that. You'll see it pop up in the chat box in just a moment.
Awesome. Thank you, Eli. We'll let you do that. And then if others have any additional questions about this, you can put your you can put your question in the chat box, or you can also send Eli a specific message and he can follow up with you too offline. And as Athena mentioned, we create a study section specific for this mechanism of community academic partners not connected to MSHAR. And we do this really to reduce conflicts of interest. So we try to remove all conflicts and any other issues so that the committee can review the applications in the best way possible. And so you can see on this screen, this is the review criteria that we use to review all of the applications. And we tweaked this criteria from NIH criteria. And so we look at significance, and that's really making sure if the project addresses a community-defined need. So it needs to be very specific that the community has said that this is a priority to them. We also look at partnership. Is there equitable involvement of all partners? And we want to make sure that both the community and academic partners are at the table in a meaningful way. The study committee also looks at your approach. Will principles of community engagement in research be used? We also look at general approaches to research as well. But we are looking for that community engaged aspect of your proposal. The study committee also looks at budget. is the budget realistic and shared fairly among partners? We want to make sure that partners are being compensated for the work that they're doing. And sometimes that means that most of the budget needs to go to the community partners. And there's more specifics when you look at our website and the full call for proposals. There's a lot more detail about what is allowed in the budget. We also look at community benefit. Are there direct benefits to the community that's involved in the project, as well as sustainability? So we want to know, will the project lead to new efforts and collaboration? And that some applications will list future mechanisms that they hope to apply for, or at least some short-term goals, what they hope to do next. So I'll pass it on to Athena now to talk about how to apply.
Thank you, Tricia and Eli. If we look at our the next slide that's on your screen, again, the deadline is February 21st. The first step is once you have identified your community and or academic partner, to take a look at the RFP to see if you can address one of these specific, the 7 community identified themes. That is, so the first one is communication, information sharing, and transparency. The second would be trust, mistrust, and institutional relationships. The third is social behavior, mental health interventions. The fourth is special populations, especially the youth and older adults. And the fifth, excuse me, is long-term health outcomes. Number 6 is community capacity of faith and community-based systems for public health. And 7, facilitating a community-wide research agenda. However, if your project does not fit into one of these, please feel free to submit anyway. Again, reaching out to our team to make sure that it's a fit, but we are not holding you to one of these 7. These are just brainstorming activities to give you some examples of what the community has identified in the past of some health needs that need to be addressed. The second step will be to fill out the budget form. And if you were able to go to mishar.umich.edu, you're able to see all of these forms and they are downloadable. Complete the face page. Again, the face page does have a 250 word maximum for the abstract. And then write your project plan. That is no more than 2 pages outlining what you're proposing to do within a 12-month time frame. So the timeline for this application is the applications are due on February 21st, and then they will be reviewed by the study team. And we plan to have the awardees notified by the end of March. And projects can begin as early as April 1st, as long as all the criteria has been met to get started, such as the IRB and things of that nature. And then you'll have 12 months to work together in your team to identify and to address the health concern. Step 5 is the review to look over the checklist to make sure everything is taken care of. And step 6 is to submit your application on Competition Space, which is the U of M online portal. We strongly suggest that non-U of M applicants set up your InfoReady app account in advance to make sure there's any delays in submitting your application. Are there any questions so far about how to apply? Great. The next we have tips for developing a strong partnership and application. So you can email our team, Mishar Community Engagement, umich.edu, and submit your questions directly there. And we can help find a partner as well as contacting me directly. Set up the initial planning meeting with your community or academic partner to discuss the plan. We're about a month out from the deadline, so we encourage you to get that process started right away. Think about the role that each partner will have and how that partnership, it will be equitable. As Tricia mentioned, when the reviewers look at the budget, it's very important that we see that the community is being compensated for their time, their expertise, and their experience. Additional tips is to give yourself enough time to get input from all of the partners on each section of the grant. If you guys are anything like me, I have this little tinkle about procrastination, and it doesn't always work when you're working in a partnership. So make sure that you give not only yourself enough time, but your partner enough time to give input and to validate the information that you're both agreeing on the work that you'll be doing for this proposal. And then we want you to be explicit about the CNR approach and principles that the partnership will use, sharing data with the community and a commitment for sustainability. And lastly, provide details about the specific activities and timeline. As you probably know, that either the $5,000 or the $10,000 is not a huge amount of money, and 12 months is not a lot of time. But we know that with this opportunity, you and your partnership can make a tremendous impact on the Flint and the health impacts. So dive in, reach out to us, and use the Mishar resources that are available, such as Eli, to create those measurements, as well as put in the evaluation that you will make on your project. Some of the Mishar resources include funding. Similar to this, we also have an upcoming award, which is called the Pathways to First Grants. And that's up to $50,000 for researchers and teams working together on their first external grant. Or for those that have already served as a principal investigator, up to $75,000 can be you can apply for. Tricia mentioned also that there's levels of increased engagement and partnership. So we want you to go from investigators initiated research to collaborative research. And what we're proposing here is community-based participatory research, where the community has an equitable seat at the table in every part of the process. The planning of the project, the writing, as well as the budget and the outcomes and distribution of the information and dissemination. Additionally, Mishar has grant editing services. So as you completing those drafts, you can submit it to myself, Tricia, and the team, as well as Mishar has its own unit of grant editing services for larger grants as well. And that includes grammar, spelling, sentence clarity, page limits, elimination of jargon, and overall logic and flow. We strongly encourage you to utilize those resources. We do want to leave room in our time together for additional questions that you may have about rather it be the timeline for the project, questions about the specific community identified themes. Are there any questions that you would like to submit to our team? Thank you for joining us, Jessica. Sounds good. I look forward to speaking with you as well. Trisha, there's a question in the chat you may want to address. It says, are the other grant opportunities only available for U of M staff and researchers?
Yeah, so the pathway awards that Athena mentioned are only available for University of Michigan academics alongside community partners. But the Building Capacity for Research and Action is open to any academic institution in partnership with community. And I just want to point that out because it's really innovative and really outside of the box of what the University of Michigan normally allows. But yeah, the one that she mentioned on the screen is only for U of M. So, but if you're looking for additional funds, if you apply for this mechanism and you want to brainstorm with us about how to sustain it after you receive these, hopefully, we would love to talk to you about that. Are there any other questions? And Athena, can you go to the next slide? Oh, you did. And Athena can point it out as well, but the community engagement team as well as Eli and evaluation, we would love to meet with you or your team to talk about this mechanism and other resources that are available at Mishar. Athena and others can look at your proposal, make sure that you've answered everything. We're not on the study section, so we are able to provide tips and tricks and do that because we want you to get funded. We want you to have a successful application. We want you to have sustained partnerships between the community and academics. So we want you to succeed. Athena, do you want to add anything?
No, I'm excited to see what this next round yields us. So please feel free to reach out to us with any questions through email, or my phone number is on the screen as well. I'd love to hear about some of the projects that you have in mind so that we can help you within this next few weeks, as well as throughout the next part of this grant. If there's no other questions from our participants, I would love to give you back 19 more minutes of your day so that we can continue to make an impact in our communities.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Tricia. Thank you, Athena.
Thank you, Eli. Have a great day, everyone.